Good afternoon, Ram Nation. We are back with another edition of DNVR Rams Live. It's good to be back. First live show of the week. We're going to have a ton of content coming out this weekend. I've obviously been on vacation for the last week, which was awesome. I appreciate everybody understanding. It's hard to get much time off, obviously, during the chaos of football season. And then we get to a point where football and basketball are going at the same time. Borderline impossible, but it was really nice to spend a little bit of family time, get some time in the mountains as well, which is always great. I mean, as much beauty as we have in this state with how busy I am, I don't really get to experience it all that much. I'm going to give some observations from day 8. We're almost at the halfway point through fall camp at this point. I'm going to talk about just a couple of guys that stood out, give a couple of observations, stuff like that. We're going to play interviews with Armani Winfield and Bill Best. Winfield, obviously the former 4-star recruit that transferred over from Baylor. Bill Best, the offensive line coach. I'm going to talk about the tight ends at the end. A lot to get into. I have tried to be pretty clear that I don't want to try and make training camp bigger than it is. Like, we truly learn the most about these teams when they start playing games that matter and it's real competition. But I mean, I want to keep you guys as informed as possible, give you everything that I can. Look, I've been asked a lot of thoughts on the viral Deion presser from yesterday, so I guess we can just go ahead and get that out of the way here. First things first, I'll say, like, sports media as a whole, we all take ourselves far too seriously. Like, I definitely can admit that. I think there are times where coaches can be defensive, or maybe they get into it with the media and, like, everybody in the media is like, oh my God, they get up in arms and get really defensive about it. And there are times where I'm kind of on the coach's side. In this instance, it was a really weird deal to me because it seemed like he had a lot of beef with a lot of different people. Usually when you have such a tense moment like that, it's just one particular guy that the coach has beef with and they kind of go at it. Obviously, Sean Keeler kind of got the brunt of that. That was a whole awkward exchange for a couple of minutes there. I'm not surprised that Deion doesn't like Sean Keeler. I will say Keeler's consistent. Like, and I've said this on the pod, I've had him on before. I don't agree with everything that he says, but he's a columnist. It's his job to write his opinion. He stands by it. And I respect that he shows up after he gives his opinion, which is something that a lot of people on the internet don't do. They're not there every day. They don't show face. They don't do it. Now, Deion has every right to express how he feels to the media as well. But the stuff that got really weird to me was like the beef with CBS. I didn't quite understand that. There's a lot of layers to CBS. Like, obviously that's a national outlet, but the local Denver guys, I don't understand the beef with them. I don't understand the beef with Arnie Stapleton from the Associated Press, who's one of the classiest, like, most traditional by the books journalists that there is. I mean, quite literally just says what is happening. And to me, like, just having covered a lot of different coaches, like, it gives off Daz vibes. It gives off Steve Adazio vibes. And I know that the Deion cult, the mob, they're not going to like to hear that. They're going to say that's ridiculous. But it was just the you're either with us or against us mentality that Daz had, and immediately getting defensive about very fair questions. It doesn't give off the vibe of security or stability. And I don't know. I thought it was really weird how that whole situation played out. I'm interested to see kind of how it progresses through the season. Like, does that relationship with the local media totally deteriorate at this point? Or, does he kind of come around a little bit and play ball? I don't know. I mean, I understand that Deion is in a position where he's a celebrity, a global celebrity. He doesn't necessarily need the local press to get attention. I mean, we all know that. Again, like, I'm not trying to sit here and be like the sanctity of the relationship, the, local media were so important, this, that. There is kind of a give and take to the process. That's just how it works. I will say I've never seen a winning program have a leader that acts quite like that. We'll see what happens this year. It was just a really odd situation. I'm thankful to not have to be a part of the circus. I'll say that. I don't know. I mean, based on how he's treating CBS now, like, is me coming on here and being critical, is that going to hurt his relationship with our Buffs guys? If so, like, that's really petty and immature, and that's just not the way that like a winner traditionally acts. Now I understand that Deion has had a lot of success everywhere that he's been, and maybe he'll prove me wrong. And if that's the case, I'll gladly eat it. But I just, to me, it doesn't seem like a situation that's going to pan out in the long run. Again, we'll see. I don't know. None of us do, but I am glad that I do not have to take part of that. I'm glad that I get to cover coaches that, treat me with respect and allow me to do my job, which is occasionally be critical. That's my 2 thoughts on it. We're going to get into everything that happened from practice today. Real quick, I do want to shout out our friends over at Coors Light. Between work, between social media, between everything else, it's easy to get worked up. Life is chaotic. Life is stressful. Maybe you're getting worked up about what I'm saying. Maybe you're getting worked up about what's happening in real world. No matter what you get worked up about, it's important to choose a chill mindset. Take your deep breaths, go out, get a little bit of fresh air like I did this past week. It's important when you put yourself in that chill mindset, then crack open an ice cold Coors Light. When the mountains turn blue, it's as cold as the Rockies. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for a smoother finish. Coors Light is mountain cold refreshment, crisp and refreshing as the Colorado Rockies. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Get Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. I also want to shout out the friends over at Game Time. It's never been easier to buy last-minute tickets than with our friends over at Game Time, whether you're trying to get last-minute baseball tickets, comedy. Maybe you're going to hit up Comedy Works. They've got stuff for stand-up. They've got theater. They've got NBA. They've got NFL. They have got it all. When you shop with Game Time, you can get last-minute tickets, and they've got flash deals, zone deals, anything that you need to save big. You can save up to 60% buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theaters, etc. You can save even more with their in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. With the lowest price guarantee, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use that code DNVR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account. Redeem that code DNVR for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, we caught up with Armani Winfield today, who came over from Baylor. We're going to get to that interview in a couple of minutes. I also caught up with Bill Best, which was great. Always appreciate him giving me some time. He was great too, because he answered a couple of my questions that honestly I butchered. Like, sometimes it turns into like diarrhea of the mouth. Can't get it out. He knew what I meant, but it was great. One of the things that stood out to me today, and obviously, I missed the last couple of days, but I talked to Kevin Lytle this morning. I talked to a couple of people who had been there for that first scrimmage as well, which Brayden Fowler-Nicolosi did not participate in. He had been limited at the beginning. He had his finger on his non-throwing hand taped up. I kind of cracked a fingernail, I assume, on hitting it on a helmet like early on in the month. They were just being precautionary, but today, both him and Kobe Johnson appeared to be participating 100%, which is great to see. As much as I've talked about the benefit of Brayden getting to have this whole fall camp with the ones, which is not something that he had a year ago, at some point, like if he had continued to be limited, for like the next week or two, then you start thinking like, oh man, like, is this finger injury going to be something that's nagging and kind of, goes on throughout the season? But looks good to go, which is good to see. He had a couple of balls today that were really, really impressive. I had one in the red zone early on to Jamari Person. Jamari Person also having a nice fall camp. He had a corner route throw to Torrey Horton where it just felt like it was in the air forever. Jay loves that route too, so I imagine we'll see some of that throughout the season. But it's just good to see him healthy. It's good to see him ripping the ball down the field. Nice to see the touch. I mean, it was a non-throwing hand injury, so I wasn't super worried about it. But I mean, you never know. Like, the more that lingers on, the more it can be an issue just with ball security and that type of stuff. But good to see him out there. Good to see Kobe Johnson back in the mix. He had been kind of limited as well. He obviously missed the majority of that last season with a torn ACL. I am kind of interested to see how that shakes out in the backfield. Looked like Justin Marshall is getting some touches with the ones, at least in the portion of practice that we were able to watch. I still assume that's going to be the two-headed, monster, if you will. But you're starting 1 and 2 running back. That said, like, they've got a lot of guys that look really intriguing. I mean, I'm obviously interested to see how Jalen Dupree develops down the line, but you've still got Avery Morrow in the mix. And a guy who looks really nice out there, and again, I mean, it's training camp, you can only take so much from it, is Keegan Hollis, man. He really runs the ball well. I am interested to kind of see how he pans out there. We got some questions here. Kevin Long wants to know how his freshman Owen Long looked. Admittedly, especially like on the defensive side, we have not got to see a ton of full contact, like the 1s versus 1, 2 versus 2s. It just has not, it's been a lot of individual drills that we've gotten to see. So it's hard to really gauge with some of the guys in the trenches, some of those guys in the front 7, the linebackers like Owen. I am kind of interested to see what happens there, but I do think we'll get a better look at the defensive side as we see more practices in full pads, and in particular that second scrimmage, which is coming up on Wednesday, which I think is going to be huge. That said, from what I heard, I mean, they went like 3+ hours in that first scrimmage, got a lot of reps with the 3s, with the 4s. A lot of these young guys are getting a lot of playing time, which is encouraging. And I mean, I think that's a good indication of where this program is at. You have guys that you feel really comfortable with in the starting lineup. You've got a lot of veterans that you feel like you can depend on, but it also feels like you're in a spot where you have guys that you're excited for these next couple of years, and you can focus on developing them, when that really was not the case the first couple of years, because, Norvell comes in, they basically sign like 55+ new players, and then you lose some of them. At that point, you're just signing bodies to field the team. Last year it got a little bit better, but the depth still wasn't there. And this year it feels like finally, like, you've got the 1s and 2s, but you've also got some really encouraging freshmen and sophomores that hopefully, as long as they stick around, will pan out, and we'll see what happens from there. As far as some more observations, just young guys that have kind of stood out, the wide receiver room is really athletic. That's no surprise, but I mean, Jamari Person had a great day. Freshman Corey Hall, he had a couple of really nice catches today. One of them was contested along the sideline. Had another one where he kind of had to contort his body and adjust midair in the end zone to bring in a deep ball. He's really stood out from what I've heard. I think that's what's probably the most encouraging thing about the state of the offense, is you obviously have Torrey Horton and Brayden Fowler-Nicolosi, which is really exciting. But you bring in a guy like Armani Winfield from Baylor, former 4-star recruit, and just, when you watch how he moves, it's just different out there. But then you've got Donovan Ollie. He's played in a couple of Power 4 programs. Yeah, Dylan Goffney, who came over from SMU in the slot. He's 215 pounds. And Caleb Goody's had a great fall. Jamari Person, and you're excited about Corey Hall, Jordan Ross, Stephon Daly, all these guys. They're really athletic in that wide receiver room. And I was able to kind of talk about that with Armani Winfield, as well as the opportunity to come over, kind of hopefully, help rebuild CSU, if you will. That they've not been able to get to the postseason, obviously, since 2017. But he talked about being excited for the opportunity, the chance to play opposite of Torrey Horton. Obviously, those guys together, going to be quite the mismatch. But here's that interview with Armani Winfield. I caught up with him for a couple minutes after practice today. Really appreciate him giving me some of his time. You guys are about a week and a half into camp. Just kind of, what's your impression of everything so far, and how are you adjusting to life in Fort Collins?
Life in Fort Collins is pretty good. I like the place. And just fall camp, just being around the guys 24/7, getting in the scheme and stuff like that, and just really just getting bought into what the coaches are selling. I feel like we have a really good chance of being really good this year.
What was it about CSU that appealed to you in terms of, finish or continuing your football career? Obviously, you had a lot of options. What was it about CSU that made you decide this is the spot?
Obviously, we all know who Torrey is, and Torrey, back-to-back 1,000-yard receiver, and he accomplished things that I want to accomplish, and Coach Norvell put him in situations to accomplish those things. And so hopefully Coach Norvell can do the same thing with me.
Was there any hesitation? Just give. I mean, they haven't been to the postseason obviously in 6-7 years. Like, is that a motivation of wanting to help turn it around? I suppose.
Oh, for sure. I mean, honestly, me personally, I see a lot of opportunity here, and opportunity can go to a lot of different things, and so that's why I chose.
You mentioned Torrey Horton. He's obviously takes a lot of attention from defenses. Do you feel like you guys together are really going to be essentially just a coverage mismatch?
What? Yes. I feel like it could be a really good dynamic duo. Even DG or all the receivers as a group, we're all going to need Torrey. We're all going to need each other. So I feel like as a unit, we're always going to help each other.
There's a lot of talk about Power 5 versus non-Power 5. Just you mentioned there's a lot of guys in this room. I mean, just how much talent is in that wide receiver room?
Honestly, coming from Baylor, there's probably just as much talent in CSU's receiver room than probably a lot of other places in the country. So, yeah.
And then just, it takes a while, obviously, to establish a relationship, chemistry with the quarterback. Just what's it been like getting to know Brayden? I know he's got the finger thing, so it's probably slowed things down a little bit.
Well,
but
we actually established that chemistry during the summer. We threw every 2 days for like 2 hours straight. So there's also been a lot of work that has gone behind the scenes that a lot of people haven't seen, but there's definitely chemistry there.
Do you, when you look at Brayden, does he kind of command respect as a leader? I mean, he obviously was in a weird spot last year. He wasn't going to be the starter, got thrown into the fire, ended up kind of running with the job. But what kind of leadership skills do you see out of him?
Since I've been here, he's been a lot more vocal. Day by day, he's getting more vocal. He's calling the offense. He's audibly in things. You can tell he's real comfortable in the quarterback position right now. And so I just hope he just grows from here.
Appreciate Armani for giving me some of his time. Great to get his perspective on everything. I think that makes a lot of sense. I assume, and I guess I don't even have to assume, we know for a fact because he said it and because of what Jay said a couple of months ago, Torrey Horton and his success was really a big selling point for CSU on the recruiting trail this past year. It was a big factor in what allowed them to land Armani Winfield, who visited Wisconsin. He had a lot of interest from Liberty. It helped them in landing Jackson Warren, who had some ACC schools coming in on him. Ole Miss, Florida State as well came in late in the mix. It's good to hear that the chemistry is going well with BFN, even though, Brayden had been somewhat limited. That just shows that those reps they get in the summer is really huge. But I'm really excited to see how Armani is able to kind of factor into this offense. I think the possibility of him going out there with Torrey Horton, the speed that they can attack teams with on top of, the size that they have at tight end. I'm going to talk about that a little bit at the end. I think they really have an opportunity to put some stress on some opposing coordinators, and it's going to be interesting to see, how consistently they're able to get these guys, how much attention does Torrey command, and what does that allow for a guy like Armani Winfield to do, especially against, Mountain West defensive backs. You're just not going to have enough guys to be able to cover the amount of athletes that CSU is going to be able to throw out there. We're going to talk about the offensive line as well, which is obviously going to be a big factor if this offense is going to do what you hope. They accomplished a lot last year in terms of pass protection. They made major strides there. They didn't run the ball as consistently as they would like, and that's been a big focus throughout fall camp. It was in the spring as well. Just wanting to be able to run the ball better, especially in third and short type situations and situations where you're trying to run out the clock. I caught up with Bill Best, and they really like where the depth is at. It's in a lot better position than it was a couple of years ago. It's still not perfect. Like, I wouldn't say you've got like 12, 13 guys or something like that you would trust, but it does feel like a spot where, if you were to have a guy go down, and heaven forbid, you don't want that to happen, but if you were to have a guy go down, you have some depth behind that could step up and fill in. You're really encouraged by Tanner Morley in his second year in the program. Keegan Hamilton got a ton of experience a couple years ago, got thrown into the fire, frankly. And while that was beneficial to get that experience, it's been good for him to kind of have a chance to develop behind the scenes. You've got a big Ader, behind the scenes. I've given up on trying to pronounce his last name. I can't do it. Christian Martin as well. So we're going to play this interview with Bill Best here in just a second, but I do want to talk to you guys real quick. There are a lot of financial institutions out there. The one I want you to remember, Premier Members Credit Union. They're not a bank. It means they do things differently, like putting their members first with higher savings interest and lower loan rates. It's an organization that serves the community and the Colorado community. In particular, with PMCU, you get local branches, friendly tellers, and the tools you need to save smarter. Check out their new high yield savings account. Earn 5% APY on your first $2,000 with the reverse tier money market. Whatever your goals, they can help. PMCU is about creating a better banking experience for the community. When you become a new member at PMCU, you'll get $200. All you got to do is open a checking account and sign up for e-statements. It's that easy. This will be your best money move yet. Head to becomepremier.com to find out more. Also, we've got a lot of cool stuff going on at DNVR. We've got tailgate season coming up. Preseason is here, which is awesome. We've got the best tailgate in town. It's at the Sports Fan backlot at the corner of 18th and Federal. I'll be there before every game. If you want to come talk Broncos football, we can argue about college football if you want. Whatever you're into, come on, have a beer. We've got great food. It's awesome. We're going to be doing multiple Avalanche takeovers this November and December. It's going to be great when hockey season comes around. We've got the Todd Helton night coming up on August 17th. Follow us on social at DNVR_sports or go to thednvr.com/events to check out our calendar and all of the awesome stuff going on. It really has never been better to be a sports fan in the Mile High City. But here is a video with offensive line coach Bill Best. And I appreciate him because I'm going to be honest, a couple of these questions, I butchered them, but he knew what I was going for. He picked up what I was putting down, and he's always great. All these coaches are. They're really great, and they give us time and great access, and it's not something I take for granted. You guys are, now kind of in a full pads. You have your first scrimmage, got the second one coming up. Just what have you seen out of the group, and kind of what are you looking for here as we get closer to the season?
Yeah, I think the first group's doing a good job gelling together. The communications on next level, which is where you want it to be. A lot of veteran guys that have played, so they're getting gelled pretty good. The twos are coming along nicely. Not quite there yet with them, but I think that we do have very capable bodies. We don't have a ton of depth, but the depth that we do have right now, even with the young guys, it's talent. So we just got to keep developing guys.
Does it kind of feel like you guys are more in a traditional spot? I mean, the first couple classes, you guys are basically just trying to get enough bodies to field a team. Does it finally feel like you're in a spot where it's like, yes, we can focus on the ones and twos, but it just feels a little bit normal, I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
It's starting to get there for sure. I mean, we're, like I mentioned to someone before, we're almost a top-down program with the O-line. Like, we have a great group of older guys. There's a middle group that's still a little bit behind. They're not juniors, they're sophomores or redshirt freshmen, and then we have the true freshmen. So we have a little bit of a hole, and we're playing short right now a little bit with numbers. We've got to get a couple guys back from injury, but it's starting to get that way.
How big is it to have guys like Jacob Gardner and Drew Moss back for this unit?
Yeah, it's really good. They get things. It's good to have guys that are auditory learners. They can hear things and process fast, where most guys these days are visual learners. Those two guys can hear things and process and communicate, and then they can take what I've said and teach the younger guys. So it's like having two extra coaches.
What went behind the decision to move Drew Moss inside?
Well, I mean, his future. I mean, he's a shorter tackle, and he was a really good tackle for us. But his future, I mean, he's an NFL prospect, very twitchy. And it just suits him better to play inside. He's built for that.
Is that a tough balance when because it's like you want to do what's best for these guys in their future, but you also want to do what's best for the line and to win? Is that something that you guys?
I want to do what's best for Colorado State, and having an NFL caliber guard is really good, but you got to recruit. And now we have guys that can play tackle, that can fill in. Aaron Karras is ready to play. Wasn't quite ready last year, so Drew was able to fill in, play, and it's best for CSU that Drew Moss is there. Also best for him.
I got to imagine, too, it's a strength for those guys like Drew and Jacob who have had some positional versatility and probably see the game a little bit different just because they've been everywhere.
They do. I mean, experience is the best teacher, right? I mean, those guys have seen a lot at different levels, and Jacob's played a whole bunch of football games. He started 45 games with left tackle and center, and he's seen a bunch, and his experience is valuable to him, and it's valuable to everyone around him.
And then the big thing Jay has emphasized a couple of times is just wanting to run the football with more consistency. Do you feel like the continuity within the unit is going to kind of lead to that?
Yeah, like I said before, it's getting there. We're playing with the ones. We're playing on a pretty good level. We want to keep ratcheting the levels up, but we're starting to see things and movements and patterns that are complex, and we're doing a good job recognizing and picking it up. So we're getting there.
Thanks, Coach. Big shout out to Bill Bess. Big shout out to everybody in the Toyota chat as well. Rams fans, Buffs fans too. I mean, you guys love to say little brother, but here you are, 25 minutes into my broadcast, still listening. um, it's all fun, guys. It's all good. Everybody, as long as you keep it polite, I enjoy the engagement. But I'm really interested to see what happens with this offensive line this year. The size is definitely there. They're going to average about 6'5", 305. You need Aaron Karras at right tackle to really step up. I mean, we haven't seen him yet, so we'll kind of see what happens there. His brother, though, was an all-conference tackle at Air Force. We've heard a lot of good things about him behind the scenes. Drew Moss moving to the interior, I think that's going to be good, in particular for the run game. I also think, having a deeper backfield is going to help CSU out. We all love Van the Man. Van Shield ran really hard for the Rams last year, stepped up for CSU in a tight spot. But, I mean, the reality is they're just better suited now. They're more explosive between Kobe Johnson and then obviously hoping that Justin Marshall can build off of what he was able to do those last couple of games. And it's been a long time since we've seen a CSU running back produce the way that he did, albeit in a small sample size. One of the areas of the offense I'm interested to follow these next couple of weeks is definitely the tight end room. I think coming in, we all just assumed it was Jackson Warren and kind of the rest would just be a supporting cast. Maybe they factor in special teams. I will say Vince Brown starting to make kind of a strong impression. He had a touchdown in the scrimmage on Wednesday. CSU shared that out, kind of ran through an arm tackle there. Got to be better if you're the DB, but also, a nice play for Vince Brown. I thought he made a couple of plays today, just kind of watching him. He definitely moves well. 6'6", 230. I mean, if you're able to get him in the mix with him and Warren, who's 6'8", 240, that's just a ton of size to throw at teams, especially Mountain West opponents. If you can occasionally run some 12 personnel, that might help, with some of the issues that you've had in the run game. But also with those guys, you can kind of use them as a de facto wide receiver. I mean, I think there are some times where you could, especially in the spread, like have a situation where maybe it's occasionally a receiver, or maybe it's Vince Brown. I mean, he's just one of those guys where you can throw it up and let him go get it. Now, I do think that Jackson Warren is still going to be the starting tight end. I still think he's going to have more catches when it's all said and done. I do think, though, that Vince Brown is pushing for more playing time, and I would love to see it because I think it would be a big benefit for this offense, just being able to have more options in the red zone, having more options to attack you up the seam. I mean, just having guys with that kind of size and leaping ability, it's going to be tough, in particular against Mountain West defensive backs where, frankly, they're just going to be mismatches. Like if you're a Mountain West team and they're throwing Jackson Warren and Torrey Horton and Armani Winfield and Vince Brown, I mean, that size and speed, that's a lot to deal with. And then you got to focus on Kobe Johnson and Justin Marshall coming out of the backfield. Like it gives you an opportunity to be versatile. It gives you a little bit of stability in case you deal with injuries. And obviously that's pretty much always going to be a factor in a physical sport like football. You're going to have guys that get dinged up for a little bit. The more weapons you have, the more versatile you're going to be. And that's not where CSU was a couple of years ago. Took a major stride in the right direction last year. Unfortunately, a couple of those guys decided to move on, but you're then able to kind of reload over the offseason with the guys that you brought in. And I'm really intrigued. I think they've got a good mix of experience. I think they've got a nice class of up and coming talent that, can kind of start to pop this year, but then will kind of take over, in the future years once guys like Torrey Horton are no longer in the mix. But Vince Brown, definitely a name to keep an eye on. Somebody in the Toyota chat earlier, they asked me about Newer Gatkuth being in a boot, asking if he was okay. I don't have any specifics on his injury situation, so I don't want to speculate. I will say from what I've been told, I don't believe that it's anything serious or anything like that. They're being precautionary with a lot of guys. I mean, they eased Kobe and BFN back in. Donovan Ollie was out there in a boot today, but from what I've heard, it's just precautionary as well. Jordan Noyes has been in a boot. I mean, they've got a lot of guys that they're kind of just taking it easy with, and I think that makes a lot of sense because a lot of these guys are well established. I am curious though, how long they'll be in it. I'll give you guys updates when I can, but we're not allowed to ask other coaches or players about injuries. They can only be directed to Norvell. So I don't want to get in trouble, or I don't want to put any information out that may or may not be correct. So that's pretty much all I've got for you guys today. If you've got any more questions in the Toyota chat, shoot them my way. But we'll have lots of content coming out. I'm going to do full position previews, both on the written and audio side. So lots of stuff coming out for you guys. I appreciate everybody being locked in with us. Looking forward to the Olympic gold medal basketball game. Was pulling for my guy Jokic in Serbia. That was very controversial. I know apparently some people were very up in arms about Nuggets fans rooting for Jokic, but I'm interested to see kind of how that one plays out there. How many times can I say interested in one podcast? We are going to test the record today. Much love, y'all. Always proud to be. Make sure you keep up with all the content throughout the week. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.